Hey, this is Scott, and I'm just going to walk you through the process of making the giant Frankenstein's monster. I'm starting with Z-spheres here. They're not my favorite way to get started, but I vowed on this project that I would make everything from scratch and not rely on any base models that I already have. So Z-spheres are a good way to get bone lengths properly and just rough out shapes, lengths, and scale pretty quickly. And toggling back and forth, you can see what you got. So I made a Dynamesh from it really quickly, and I'm just roughing in the shapes with a clay brush. I usually use the clay brush, the move brush, inflate brush, and the damn standard are my favorites. And I could pretty much do anything I need to with that. And then texturing with alphas, and then hand detailing. Right here, I'm just using the damn standard to carve in muscles and using shift to smooth. And that's usually the way I do it. Everything is kind of sketchy with me. Well, everything's kind of sketchy with me. Trust me. But I'll scribe in lines and smooth. I'll inflate and smooth. I'll move and smooth. It's just an easy way of subtly building up things, using the move tool to just do wholesale moves. And here I'm moving on to the hands. The hands I did from a sphere. I didn't want to have to go through showing that whole process. It can be laborsome, but it's basically the same thing as the Z tool or the Z spheres. I'm using masking to pose, and I'm using the inflate brush and the clay brush again, damn standard to carve into it. Here I'm matching it to the body form so that I can remesh them together at some point. Alright, this is a method for making nails without having to extract a separate piece. It's just mask it, invert it, swell it up, and pull it around. It works really well, and it keeps the amount of models down. And you can get really nice details. These are going to be small. You always have to think about the scale the thing's going to be at in its final form. Again, I live and die by the inflate brush here. You'll see I'm masking this out. I'm going to invert it and hide the mask. That way I can see exactly what I want to get with the veins. There's the inverted mask, and then I just made it not visible. Swelling up the veins, checking the mask again. And I can smooth these and move them around without destroying the detail everywhere else. Same thing with this. I'm scribing in my lines, using the inflate brush to swell it up. And then I'm going to do an extraction. I'm just going to mask out little lines, extract them very thin, and then use the move topology brush, which you can have multiple items on a single layer, and that brush will only move individual polys or individual pieces. So you can just fudge those around. It gets a little fiddly, but these are going to be painted metal, and it's going to be a gory little messy thing with flesh swelled up around it. So I'm not real concerned. And again, the scale. You got to think about what the scale is going to be. A lot of people spend a lot of time fussing over things that don't matter. I mean, if it matters to you, great. But what's the project? What's the main focus? Now I'm going to flip that around and use the inflate brush again, just to kind of make it look like it's embedded. Instead of digging holes, I'm swelling up around it, which is, I think, more effective in the long run. Now I'm moving on to the face. Doing it again from a sphere, making a poly mesh, or a Dynamesh. masking and pushing, using the move tool and just remeshing. I brought in a spotlight image that I can line everything up with, kind of get my overall forms, which are way off at this point, but I'm just trying to get through it, to get to where I can start correcting things. As you can see, it's a really low mesh, or low res mesh. Looks nothing like the final product, but I'm using a clay brush to push around things and build up, try to get some of those forms. Like I said, I build up and smooth, build up and smooth, build up and smooth. So you can see how low res the mesh is. At a point now, I just upped it there. Just get a little bit more detail. If it doesn't look right without the detail, it doesn't look right with the detail. So don't rush it. So I'm just going in, and I like to keep everything at the same detail level. I don't like to forget about things. I don't like to oh, the back of the head is trash, or the ears are trash until the end, and then you have to bring it all up. Just work on everything at the same time. Bring everything to the same detail level, and if you're doing a whole body, hands, feet, legs, arms, everything up to the same detail levels. That way, you're not playing catch up at the end. You're just finishing as it goes. Here I'm just restructuring it to get it to be closer to what I wanted. It was never intended to be an exact duplicate. I based a lot of this on the original, but I also based it on a lot of his Jack Davis's Frankenstein drawings and paintings that he did. Threw a little bit more Karloff in this one by the end. Okay, I've remeshed it here. And I'm just using a damn standard brush to scratch in some detail. Same thing with with a little bit of skin detail, and I'll use a alpha brush and just drag rectangle, get a little noise on that surface, and then start scratching in some of my lines. It gets closer and closer as you go. Like I said, you build it up, you build it up, you build it up. It's not just one, the time you decide, okay, now it's time for detail. That's really a dangerous way to work. But if you remesh it over and over and as many times as I do, you can ramp down the subdivisions, smooth things out, move them around, and it's not going to mess up the detail. Now it's time to start adding a little bit more of the personality. Tilt to the head, mess with some of the detail and the features of the face. Again, I'm never that concerned about the detail. It's more about finding the forms that work, but getting it in there is it's necessary, but it's not my favorite part. And I think if you learn to just ignore the detail for as long as you can, your final product's going to be much nicer. Everybody jumps to the detail. And that's just all drag rectangle with an alpha. That's how I do almost everything. I'll do some spray detail with the spray brush, but for the most part, it's alpha detail with fine line stuff over the top of it, switching back and forth between resolution levels. And it gets a little fiddly. But again, you want it to look good, but I don't want to obsess. And again, that's just the damn standard brush. usually is set around 33, but I back it off so that the lines aren't just overwhelming. They're tight, but they're subtle. And again, just little scratchy lines. Switching between resolution levels so I can get things that are wrong in larger forms corrected, and then go in there and tighten it up. All right, so this is just figuring out how to put the bolts on. And I did it with the same way as before, with extracting from a masked area. And then you just remesh it, make it nice and tight, and then eventually these will be bullionned away from the head. And instead of digging holes right now, again, like I did on the other stitches, I'm swelling up around it. It's just a much more effective look than digging it in. I'm going to make some bolts to throw into his neck. Just using primitive objects right in ZBrush. And I'll just use this final size or this final object to print. Now, when I printed this, those little things that are on those electrodes, they didn't come out because I cast them in metal, and they looked really cool. But those little things just wouldn't hold that detail. But he's cartoony, so I'm not worried about it being, universal correct. Plus, they try to sue you. Anyway, here again, you see the swelling up using the inflate brush, and I'm going to use that extract thing again. Boom, swell them up, smooth them out, move them into place. And I'm using that move topology brush where it only moves one object at a time. It's a great brush. And then I'll do that silly swelling thing again, which looks makeup effectsy. No offense. I did makeup effects for 17 years before I ever touched a computer. All right, this is probably the most technical and the most boring, but booleans are how you break up your model into pieces, how you put keys on things. See, I've got my frozen volume there, seeing how big I can make something before it's gonna not fit on the printer. I'm just throwing keys in, and the Boolean feature will take away anything that's inside those objects and give you what's on the outside, and then you flip it around and do the opposite. Like this is going to, I'm going to put a key in here, and I'll flip it around, and it takes away. And then there's the arms, that's the opposite. So it can be a little confusing, but I mean, we're playing with primitives. It's not, it's not that tough. But once you get it, you can make perfect little model kits. I'm just making things that fit on my printers in the most efficient way. I'm not really worried about cutting it because this is all going to be covered in clothes. I ended up running tubes, Boolean tubes through these so that I could run quarter-inch tubing or quarter-inch threaded rods so that I could put it all together with that and then have something to run through the base, and it was all tied together. And here I just did a little bevel on the neck, and that's going to cut away from the body instead of the body cutting away from the head. I ended up taking this and putting in magnets after the fact. And there's my frozen printers. I have 3 frozen printers, a small, medium, and a large. And then I have a filament printer, a Bamboo Labs. They're all great printers. These are the resin printers. That's printing the head, a test version of the head. And I'm doing a test version of the boots right here. The boots are just going to be a form that is going to get leather over the top of it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. There they are. And there's the hands. They turned out really well. I did a few different prints of those. And then there's a test version of the head, which I did in the Elegoo beige, which is my favorite. It's amazing. This stuff is a little too orange for me. There's the bolts. And again, I did a silicone mold on those and cast them in metal, so that was cool. Sometimes you have to crack a few eggs, huh? There we go. Well, that's just a quick explanation of how we got to all of these parts. And there were a lot of parts, and I even printed more after this. Lower torso, upper torso, hands, heads, feet, soles of the boots, arms and legs, all from that single model, and it really didn't take that long. There's the Elegoo beige, which I really like a lot. It looks like a heavily tinted silicone, and the detail looks really nice. I could have pushed it further, but as I said before, we're not pushing for ultimate detail. We're pushing for a look. Hope you enjoyed that. Look forward to the part 2, which is the assembly of everything and the painting and the making of the actual monster. All right. Talk to you later.